today I'm going to be heading out pretty soon to do some crappie fishing. It's late fall. I thought maybe today would be a good opportunity to present a video on crappie fishing and using floats and jigs and focusing on the negative bite. It's something that happens all the time, and understanding the negative bite will help you to produce in more catches. So stay tuned, let's take a look at that, and I'm getting myself ready. I got my D&M special here going for my crappie, and it's going to be hopefully a good trip. We'll see you out there. Floats and jigs are probably one of the best techniques to tackle crappie. And you can get floats in various sizes and shapes and designs. Basically, I enjoy using a slip bobber, and I also use a fixed bobber method. It really depends on the location where I'm fishing. If I'm fishing close to me off a boat or on a shore, fishing over structure, I tend to use slip bobbers. It really helps out with the design of your presentation. It quickly slides through the application of the float. You can use things like bobber stoppers to help you to indicate depth. You can also get weighted slip bobbers that have a weight attached onto the stem of the float. When you're fishing farther distances where you need to make a cast 10 yards, 15 yards, or even greater, slip bobbers don't really work well. I find the more line that's out there, it's difficult for these tiny little, let me show you what I mean, these tiny little jigs that we use for crappie. It's difficult for that jig to pull the line through the slip bobber at those greater distances. So I like to use a fixed bobber method. And a fixed bobber method is basically just using a slip bobber, and I put on sliced surgical tubing at the top and the bottom. Then I run that through my line, I tie my jig on, and then I put the bobber on. And I can adjust the depth as well. I can slide it up and down. This tends to be a more effective technique when casting distances. It doesn't require the jig to pull the line through a typical slip bobber, and it really helps with the bites. And that's the next thing I want to talk about. When fishing crappie, there are typically 3 different bite patterns that they have. They have the bite pattern where they come in and they're just touching the bait, and your bobbers is kind of like dancing a little bit. That's a bite that they're not really aggressive. They're not really wanting to take something. They're just investigating, and these kind of bites are difficult to indicate, and your percentage of catching fish on those kind of bites are low. Then you have the I'm hungry, I want it kind of thing, where they come in, they take the bait, and your bobber kind of goes on an angle and it moves around. Okay, that's a good bite, and those kind of bites you can see. And then you have what's called the negative bite, And that's the topic of this video, and I'll demonstrate how it works. A negative bite is when you're using a slip bobber or a fixed bobber, and they come up from the depths, they take your bait, and they keep moving through the water column. And when that happens, the weight that's holding your bobber vertical in the water is released, and the bobber flips to the side. I've talked to a lot of people, and they say, "Oh, that's, I can't figure out my fishing. My bobber keeps flopping over." Well, that's because it's a negative bite, and the crappie are coming up, taking the bait and moving up in the column, releasing that weight on the float. And those are the best bites, because when they take that bait, it's in the mouth. They're moving up in the column, it's still in the mouth. That's when you need to pop it and set that hook in deep. As I mentioned, there are different jigs that we can use. I like to use, let me see here, these Moon Eyes, the 1/16, a little smaller on that one. Like I mentioned, I like to use the long stemmed jigs that have the barbs on the shank of the hook. And I also like to color paint my own tungsten. These are ice fishing jigs. I just repainted them to a color that I like. And you can also use, and I've been successful, believe it or not, an underspinner under a float. On a fixed float, you're casting it out far. You're popping the float all the way in, and that just spins and moves in the water column, and it really attracts the attention of crappie. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the baits that I use for crappie, and I have a variety of different plastics that I use. I have some here. I typically stay with the black and chartreuse. Those are the most effective colors that I've used in the past. And I also like to use the pintail patterns. That some of these are patterns that my buddy Buck makes, and I'll leave a link underneath for you to look at. Like these baits are amazing for crappie, and there are specific times that these work really well. My go-tos when I'm first starting out is I'll move into the Berkley power baits. I like the smelt pattern. This is the 3-inch pattern. And I also like to use the 2.5-inch pattern as well. When I'm finding that they are finicky and not really interested in the bigger baits, I downsize considerably. And I'll use I'll have one over here. I'll use a tungsten. This is the 1/24 ounce, and I have them right down to 1/32 ounce. And these are tiny little guys, and they work well with a slip bobber, again, in the closer areas. Farther out, you need a fixed bobber for sure. I downsized to these 1.5-inch baits. Again, the power baits. These are the snake tongue minnows, and these things are just amazing. There are times that these things just produce so well, and it's it's fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate a negative bite and give you the idea of what it actually looks like in the water. So let's take a look at that right now. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing here is demonstrating some of the bites that you would experience when fishing with crappie on floats and jigs. I have tied up a typical setup that I would be using. I have the Moon Eye jig on, one of Buck's baits, the chartreuse and lime. I'm running a half-inch fill fixed bobber. I removed the spring and I put on the silicone surgical tubing as the line holder, so that can easily slide up and down. So basically, when you cast your system into the water, I like to test my setups prior to fishing, just to look at the buoyancy, where the bobber is resting in the water compared to the weight that I'm using. This is a pretty good setup that I have on here now. On floats, you have basically three different colors. The neutral base color, the white indicator, chartreuse indicator, and the orange indicator. These are levels of where you can put your bobber into the water. Some people prefer just having the orange tip. Some people prefer having a bit of the chartreuse or just around the white. I'm just underneath the white, so that's where I'm happy. I find the higher the bobber sits in the water, the better chance of you to indicate more strikes. That's just my preference. I don't know. Perhaps you have a different preference. But in this setup here, it's a fixed setup, so it's for casting distances. It looks pretty good there. But what I do when I'm tying this kind of a setup to check it out, I leave a lengthy tag on the end so I can actually play with my jig set up in the water like a fish would do. So the first bite that I talked about is just the finicky play around bite, where the bobber actually just kind of pops a little bit, it'll dance a little bit and it'll stop, it'll dance a little bit. That's because they're just coming in, they're poking at it. They're not really taking it. Those kind of bites, again, chances of you getting a hook up are not very good. However, you never know. The next kind of bite is the aggressive, give me it, charge, take it away, and that's when they take the bite and they take it right along and move it in the water column, and you'll see your bobber just like skit right across. That's a good indicator that the fish is stationary, leveled, has the bait, and is moving off. Then just set the hook. Now the other bite, which is probably I would say 75% of your bites will be what's called the bite, and those kind of bites, a lot of people miss it because they don't understand what's actually happening. And what happens is that the crappie feed looking up. That's their design. They look up, and when they see something, they'll come right up into the water column, and they'll take your bait, and they'll keep going up. And when that happens, your bobber flops to the side, and it's sometimes it's slow. Sometimes they'll do it quickly. That is your time to set the hook right away and get them out. Let's look at that one more time. So they'll come up, they'll take the bait, and they'll keep moving into the water column. Set the hook right away. Bang. Okay, so I hope this tip helps you out. Stay tuned for other ones. Crappie fishing is my favorite, and I love to share the knowledge that I gained over the years. And let's give it a try. Let me know what you think. Put your comments in the box below, and any suggestions you might have or tips that you think that work well. I would love to hear from you. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll leave some links in the comments below for you to look at, looking for the silicone surgical tubing and some of the stuff that I use. Okay, folks. Okay, tight lines. Until next time.